Welcome to the Bandana Podcast where we're calling a spade. Sheryl Swoopes gets put in a coffin by Nancy Lieberman. Ben, you already told us about this, Ben. You literally just produced a video about Nancy Lieberman going in on Sheryl Swoopes on the broadcast in the most respectful way possible, folks. Folks, I know. I wasn't planning on seeing you back so soon. But here we are again, folks. My last video, Nancy Lieberman says, hey, Caitlin Clark's going to make these girls millionaires like Jordan did, like Tiger did. We shouldn't hate on her. We need to celebrate her, not tolerate her. She says everything out loud, and we know who she was talking about during that TV broadcast. Nancy Lieberman stepped up in the biggest spots and championed Caitlin Clark live on TV. But let's slow down a minute. About a week and a half ago, shout out to Bobby. About a week ago, Stephen A. Smith on the Stephen A. Smith Show, he was talking WNBA, and amongst talking WNBA, he called out Sheryl Swoopes by name. By name, he called out Sheryl Swoopes, said, hey, Sheryl, the things that you're doing, the way you're downplaying Caitlin Clark, the way you're talking bad about Caitlin Clark, the way you're not mentioning Caitlin Clark when you talk about the Indiana Fever, it's idiotic, and you're a fool doing these things. Okay. I didn't make a video about it. Stephen A. Smith says something on his show, and then he says the opposite on his on First Take. Whatever. It is what, I'm not going to overreact on that, right? But then later in the afternoon, once this started making its rounds, Sheryl Swoopes had the audacity to tweet at Stephen A. Smith, actually. She says, you can talk about whomever and whatever you want to on your podcast, correct? So why can't I? Also, did you listen to the entire podcast? Did you listen to the entire episode? Nope. I have a personal relationship with these players, and they deserve recognition as well. Now, Sheryl, I'm assuming you thought Stephen A. Smith was an L. Duncan. I'm assuming you thought Stephen A. Smith was somebody that, hey, you ask for an apology, Stephen A. Smith's going to come out and apologize. Wrong. Incorrect. Never underestimate your opponent, because unlike L. Duncan, ESPN needs Stephen A. Smith. Stephen A. Smith can do just fine without First Take. He can do just fine going on his show on YouTube, the Stephen A. Smith Show, producing a 2-hour-long episode. He'll be fine. L. Duncan, on the other hand, L. Duncan got scared. So when you tweeted L. Duncan, L, are you serious? Really? Please show me where I said Katie Lou was more valuable than Caitlin on my podcast. L. Duncan, the very next day, runs on Twitter. Sheryl texted me behind the scenes. She said she wasn't going to invite me to the cookout. And you know I'm trying to be part of the cool kid club. So I take everything bad I said about Sheryl Swoopes, I take it back. L. Duncan, weak. But Stephen A. Smith did something that not even I was expecting. Remember I told you Nancy Lieberman went on about a 1-minute spiel, big upping Caitlin Clark, attacking each and every point Sheryl Swoopes has ever made on Caitlin Clark, addressing it live on the broadcast. Mind you, a broadcast that Sheryl Swoopes was supposed to be a part of. Keep that in mind. So earlier today, after First Take, about 2 hours ago, Stephen A. Smith produces his podcast. And the podcast is titled Responding to Sheryl Swoopes, Nancy Lieberman Interview. Shout out to Dreads Bane on Twitter. As soon as Stephen A. Smith went live, he tagged me and I tuned in. Oh my goodness. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Stephen A. Smith. Man, oh man. This is in his opening right here, folks. This is among Stephen A. Smith's opening before we even get into the Nancy Lieberman part, because Nancy Lieberman, right, folks, I told you in the last video, these flip-flopping phonies on ESPN, it is what it is. I'm not going to, he says something good one day, okay. He says something bad the next day, I hate you again. He says something good one day, okay. He says something, I'm not doing that. I drew my line in the sand. Rebecca Lobo is the only one that gets the ounce of respect. But follow along with me here, and you'll see why Nancy Lieberman, she might be on the list. Shout out to Chris Jericho and Ples Walker. Let's take a listen here, shall we? Folks.
Yes, I did listen to your entire podcast. You didn't mention Caitlin Clark. So I was right, number one. Number two, your personal relationship, what that got to do with your coverage? Ain't nobody said don't mention them. Ain't nobody said don't applaud them. Nobody told you to ignore them. What we're saying is if you're going to give the Indiana Fever all the credit in the world, how you going to mention the Indiana Fever without Caitlin Clark's name even coming up? So then after that, Sheryl Swoopes engages in levels of immaturity. There's no way to slice it. I'm not going to insult this champion, this great basketball mind, this phenomenally accomplished Hall of Famer. I'm not going to insult her.
That bully.
All I'm going to say is it was pretty damn immature to come back at me like that. Called me an effing coward because I called you out for not doing your job. So you on a podcast, that means you don't have to do your job? I mean, the bottom line is this. She engaged in a level of immaturity. Let's just call it what it is. I mean, to just bite at me like that, why? Because what did I say?
Okay, Stephen A. All right, not too shabby, Stephen A. Not too shabby. You seem to realize that you don't gotta bend over every time somebody holds your foot to the fire. Appreciate that. Every time a sister holds your feet to the fire, you don't always gotta bend over, Stephen A. Use that fortitude that you were born with and stand on what you believe. So that was a nice little soliloquy. And folks, once you hear that, you're like, oh, Stephen A is actually not playing around with this one. What kind of tricks does he have up his sleeve for this show? What possibly can Nancy Lieberman bring to this show that continues to pile on, for lack of a better words? Nancy Lieberman, she addressed it all. She addressed it all. The Sheryl Swoopes, she spoke about it. The Caitlin Clark hate, she spoke about it. Sheryl Swoopes refusing to do her job as a broadcaster. Oh my God. She spoke about it. Folks, let's take a listen here. This is Nancy Lieberman speaking about Sheryl Swoopes. Speaking about when she heard Sheryl Swoopes make up lies on Gil's Arena. She called Sheryl. Sheryl. She called Sheryl. And ooh, that call didn't go too well. Let's take a listen.
Discuss that, there was this quote by Sheryl that said, Caitlin was, 25 years old. She was, however old, 24 years old. She was a fifth-year senior. Right. She was taking 40 shots a game. Her records were illegitimate. And I got off the treadmill and I called her as a friend. And I said, you can say whatever you want. You can have your own opinion about anybody, but you do have to get the statistics right. I mean, facts matter. And if you just get ahead of this and just say, hey, I made a mistake on my numbers, then this thing is over and everybody respects you for your opinion. And, you might like Boston. I might like the Yankees. It's okay to have difference of opinions. Well, she got upset with me on the phone. And I was like, Sheryl, I'm not doing anything to hurt you. I'm just sharing. We're talking. And so our relationship it pretty much is not happening at this point. I tried to talk to her at the Final Four. Right. She didn't want to talk to me. My life's going to be good or great with or without Sheryl Swoopes in my life. I'd rather have her in it. But let me tell you the difference.
Right. Woo! Oh my goodness, folks. Nancy is not pulling any punches. I called Sheryl. Sheryl, you're lying. Sheryl, you got your facts wrong. Sheryl, you were in your feelings. Sheryl, all you got to do is just come out and say, I was wrong. All you got to do is just come out and say the real truth, the facts, the numbers. But what did Sheryl do? I don't want to be your friend anymore. I don't want to be your friend anymore. Folks, Sheryl Swoopes lost a friendship because she lied on a 22-year-old kid, got called out for it by a friend, and said, you know what, friend? I don't like you holding me accountable, friend. This relationship is over, friend. Nancy, being the bigger person, said, all right, I'll let her breathe. I'll try to talk to her at the Final Four. Wants nothing to do with Nancy at the Final Four. That's just one thing Nancy said on the Stephen A. Smith show. Folks, I told you, Rebecca Lobo, Nancy Lieberman is starting to make her way on the list, folks. Now remember, yesterday's game, Sheryl Swoopes was supposed to be a part of that announce team. She was supposed to be an analyst of the game. Last second, Bally Sports, WNBA. Hey, is Sheryl doing the game today? Yeah, Cheryl's doing the game today. No, she's not. We got Nancy coming into town. I don't have time for Sheryl to embarrass us on national TV. Oh, okay. Nancy Lieberman speaks on Cheryl's inability to be professional. Sheryl Swoopes' inability to actually do her job. Folks, that's all we got to do. Do your job. This is Nancy Lieberman speaking about Sheryl Swoopes' lack thereof professionalism. Let's take a listen, shall we?
Somebody like Sheryl Swoopes even more, who, by the way, was supposed to be calling the game with y'all yesterday, and she did not call the game, and no doubt it had something to do with the fact that when, you know, how Caitlin Clark had performed early in the week, she didn't want to talk about it at all. So we recognize that, and we know in television the way that I do. I know what producers do. I know what bosses do when you see, you know, your personal feelings, whatever they may be, infiltrating the proceedings and compromising your position as a professional. But I think in the case of Sheryl Swoopes, and I'm not going to belabor this point, but it's important to be made. Sheryl Swoopes is a winner. She was great, and she's a phenomenal basketball mind. So what she's not realizing is that when she doesn't state the obvious, it's automatically going to be assumed that it's something personal, because we know you know the basketball game, the game of basketball, too well to ignore the kind of things that she's ignoring when it comes to Caitlin Clark. Am I wrong in saying that?
No, you're not wrong in saying that. And I would like to thank the Wings and Bally's for putting me on the game and asking me if I would do it. I will do anything for women's basketball. I'm just a servant leader here. At one point in my career, I wanted to be the greatest of all time. And now I just want to be a great, you know, person that supports this generation of greatness. So to your point, you know, I think she created this firestorm. She could put it out. And, you know, it's like I always tell people at this stage, your ego's not your amigo. Okay. Your ego's not your friend. We have to humble ourselves and do our job and just recognize that, you know, Caitlin might not be her cup of tea, but she's not doing anything to hurt Sheryl Swoopes. She admires Sheryl Swoopes and the Maya Moores and the Sue Birds and the legends that came before her. And I would dare say you can't find a soundbite this season of Caitlin Clark saying anything derogatory about anybody. She says, I don't care that she chatters on the court.
Class.
Who doesn't? Yeah, I mean, the great ones chattered, Bird, Magic, all of them. It's okay. That's a competitor. But, you know, I mean, for this woman, you know, to be maligned, you shouldn't. You don't have to buy the number 22 jersey if you don't want it. But what you should do is applaud her for helping grow this sport that we have busted our ass for the last 50 years. I mean, my Olympic team in 76 just got inducted last August.
Folks, that's all I'm going to play of that, but you get the point. The first 15 minutes of this Nancy Lieberman, Stephen A. Smith interview, Nancy Lieberman is hibachi chef cooking Sheryl Swoopes' boots. The cat is officially out of the bag. The cat is officially out of the bag. For Nancy Lieberman to be so upfront, to be so honest, folks, I wouldn't be surprised because we see what the WNBA is. We see the terrible leadership at the WNBA. We see it. But Nancy Lieberman pretty much saying, hey, Sheryl Swoopes has a vendetta against this woman. She can't be professional when speaking about this woman. In fact, I even reached out and tried to have her clarify some false statements. And what did Sheryl Swoopes do? She said, and slammed the door in my face. Nancy Lieberman was not playing around, folks. Now you understand while she's creeping up that list that I have. Standing on what she says. Now, she's not on the list yet, right? She's creeping because the backlash that's going to come out of this is going to be a nightmare for her. The backlash that Nancy Lieberman is going to face after being, what's that word that, honest, telling the truth. Expect the race card to be pulled. Expect it to be pulled, folks. Not only did Nancy Lieberman speak about that in terms of Sheryl Swoopes' unprofessionalism, trying to correct her about the lies, she even opened up the interview by saying, hey, I'm a fan of Sheryl Swoopes. I've known Sheryl Swoopes for a long time. I helped her get her first shoe deal. I drove her to the ESPYs. I coached her. I played with her. She used to be a friend of mine until I said, hey, can you correct some of the false narratives you've been spewing out in the media? And what did Sheryl Swoopes do? She hung up the phone and said, yeah, that's not my friend anymore. As far as I'm concerned, I'd be completely fine with never seeing Sheryl Swoopes again, hearing from Sheryl Swoopes again, having her call a broadcast ever again. Folks, at the end of the day, this is somebody who bullied 22-year-olds while she was a head coach at a big program, Loyola Chicago University. She bullied these young women so much that 10 of 12 players said, yeah, I'm foregoing my scholarship. I just want out of here. She fostered such a toxic environment that 2 assistant coaches said, yeah, I'm out of here. This isn't a good person. This isn't a nice woman. This is, for lack of a better words, a scumbag at the end of the day. Nancy Lieberman, I applaud you in your honesty. I applaud you in your courage. Because what you did on the Stephen A. Smith show today was nothing short of courageous. So, folks, what I'm asking, if anybody has Twitter out there, reach out to Nancy. Tag her. Say, Nancy, I appreciate you for speaking truth. I appreciate you for having the courage to tell it like it is on the Stephen A. Smith show. We don't got to bash Sheryl. I'll bash Sheryl Swoopes. If you want to bash her, go ahead. I'm not going to stop you. I'm not encouraging it. YouTube, I'm not encouraging it. But what I am encouraging is, hey, Nancy, what you've done these last 2 days is what women basketball has needed. It's what the WNBA has needed. Somebody to literally get up on a pedestal, scream, this is what's going on. And I commend you for that. Stephen A. Smith, you sly dog, you. It's chess, not checkers, Stephen A. I get it. Folks, imagine the optics if Stephen A. Smith would have went wild on Sheryl Swoopes. Not only would he be called a coon and all of the Uncle Toms and all this and that. Stephen A., you're attacking a woman? How are you talking to a woman like that? Stephen A. Smith saw the play. And Nancy Lieberman finished his food. And the best part of all of this is, they didn't need to lie to do it. All they had to do was ask a question, and the truth shall set you free. This is the Ben Daniel Podcast, where we're calling a spade a spade. I appreciate all of the support, folks. I didn't intend to be back here so soon, but man, the news waits for no one, as they say. Early bird gets the worm, as they say. I want to shout out to Dreads Bane as well for putting me onto this. Guys, I hope you all have a good rest of your evening. If you're seeing this tomorrow, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday afternoon. Take it easy, guys. Have a good one. See you later.